Next talk is going to be on pattern decoding analyses by one of the pioneers of fMRI pattern decoding. I'm very excited to hear what he's going to talk to us about today, Yuki Kamitani.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. So today I'm going to talk about basically brain decoding. It's a kind of multivariate voxel pattern analysis, and I'm going to just introduce basic concepts and recent new approaches. Okay, so let me start with this movie. Subject is lying in the scanner and doing a rock, paper, scissors movement, and the brain activity is measured in real time, and particular voxels are selected. And this is translated into robot movement, so that robot mimics the subject hand movement. And now it's going to change to scissors. Robot is not realizing. It's now thinking, now it changed. So, it takes some time. This is because of hemodynamic delay. So here, so the problem we have to solve is, given this, EPI image, can you tell which finger movement this subject is making? Okay, can anyone tell from this image? I think it's impossible. So let me give you some clue. I'm showing 4 examples for each, and I want you to find some commonality among these 4 images. Okay, I think it's still very difficult by our naked eye. Okay, but as we have seen in the video, we can accurately predict what the person was doing. So our approach was, instead of relying on our eyes, let the machine or computer learn. So our approach is let the computer do a pattern recognition of complicated brain images. Okay. And so we follow a basic procedure of supervised learning, classification or regression. And the first step is collect training data for machine learning. So we have brain activity pattern as input, and the output is the stimulus or task parameter. So we label brain activity by some stimulus or task parameter. And even with the identical experimental task, we can have different ways of labeling it, and that makes it interesting, to interpret what the brain is doing. Okay, and the second step is using that training data. We train a decoding model, which is a statistical classifier, or it can be also neural networks, to obtain a predictive model. Okay. And finally, we have to validate it with independent data. And in most of our studies, we do training and test of the model within the same subject's data. Especially, this is necessary especially for vision or perception experiment. Although in some other tasks, like pain in previous talk, the decoder can generalize across different subjects, but generally in perceptual contents, we usually need to train and test within the same subject. And in parallel to that, I should mention that there are people, including my group, who are trying to develop functionally aligned individual brain patterns to represent the same content. Okay, and another technical thing, although I don't have time to discuss in detail, but we have typically 100,000 voxels, but we have relatively small number of samples, like 100 to 1,000 from single experiment. So with these numbers, it's usually difficult to get the nice regression or classification using a traditional statistical method. But to make a good prediction, we have to have simple model with small number of parameters. So eventually we have to have very simple model, but to obtain that, we need some complicated methods. So I'm not going to discuss the detail, but I want you to keep in this mind. So this is, we can use very general statistical machine learning techniques, but this specific issues about brain imaging makes the variety of usable techniques a little bit difficult, and we have to come up with new methods. Okay. And from the rest of my talk, I describe several steps toward more advanced decoding, which aims at more decoding of more variety of mental contents and complex mental contents. And the zero, the basic step was from functional mapping with mass univariate analysis to machine learning-based decoding of fine-grained patterns. And other than that, I describe as a step from stimulus-induced perception to prediction of subjective mental states. And another step is from classification into just a few classes to prediction of numerous mental states beyond training data set. And the final point was a step from task-induced mental states to more spontaneously generated mental state. Okay. And I began to use this machine learning-based decoding approach in this 2005 paper. And here we try to decode the orientation of visual grating. So the left is a stimulus, and the machine learning decoder in the middle, in red, was trained with independent data set to distinguish between 4 or 8 different orientations. Okay. And in the right, the blue line shows the distribution of the decoder outputs. Okay. For instance, for vertical grating, the distribution of decoder output is shown here. So the red is the correct orientation. And as you can see, the decoding results are pretty accurate. Okay. And if you're familiar with the functional anatomy of visual cortex, you may wonder why this is possible. Because orientation columns in the visual cortex is very small compared to voxels, fMRI voxels used in standard setting. So the left figure shows the orientation columns in color, and the 3x3 grid is approximate size of standard fMRI voxels. Although now people are developing much higher resolution imaging, but still it's common practice to use this size of voxels. Okay? So using these big voxels, you can never visualize the columns. But this does not necessarily mean that you cannot extract information. So in the right, I'm showing the distribution of columns. I'm showing just the area of column regions in each voxel region. So as you can see, not all orientations are averaged out. So each voxel has some idiosyncratic pattern. Okay? So this may arise from some slightly irregular columnar structure and the random sampling. Okay? So each individual voxel may have some small amount of orientation information, even though it may not be statistically significant in the sense of SPM. But by combining the small bits of information across many voxels, maybe we can get prediction, robust prediction of orientation. Okay, so that's our explanation. And but there are people who are not happy with my interpretation, and those people I'm listed the papers by those people. The rest I'm not discussing this debate, but I think this irregularly distributed micro representation over many voxels will be ubiquitous in the brain for many different mental contents, and that's why I believe that's why this method works very well for many different brain regions and the task and the mental contents. Okay, and there are also other more basic reasons why multivoxel pattern is useful and powerful compared to univariate analysis. And one point I should mention is that this is very basic signal processing issue. So suppose we have two voxels, and these C1 and C2, C1 and C2 are different stimuli or task conditions. Okay. And if you look at each voxel, the separation is delta m. But assuming that we have this isotropic distribution for each class, if you look at this, if you draw a line in the two-dimensional space, we can have square root 2 times delta m separation. So just by having many variables with the same signal-to-noise ratio, we can get more separation. We can improve the signal-to-noise ratio. And another mechanism is shown here. Here, voxel 1 has virtually no information, and voxel 2 has small amount of information. But because of this distribution, this is distribution having a correlation, which is called noise correlation. With this shape of noise distribution, even though voxel 1 alone has no information, but it helps to add information given by voxel 2. Okay, so this means that the information from multiple voxels is not just the sum of information from individual voxels. Okay, so let me move to another topic, which is subjective states. So we have seen decoding of stimulus attributes, and we typically separate measured data into training data and the test data. But we can do a more interesting thing by looking at generalization of decoder across slightly different experimental conditions. For instance, you train the decoder as before, by just presenting stimuli, and then the same decoder is applied to a condition where the subject was imagining or paying attention to the stimulus. Okay, so just having that image in mind. Okay, and it works in many situations like attention, working memory, imagery. You can generalize stimulus-induced decoder to decode the mental contents, and depending on the brain region. So in other words, by looking at this generalization, you can look at in which brain region the information is commonly represented. Okay. So, of course, if you're interested in more subjective states like emotion, you don't always have stimulus, objective condition. But I usually recommend that whenever you have some more objective condition, I recommend to use that condition for training the decoder, because in theory, we cannot know the subject's mind. So if we train the decoder in subjective condition, the interpretation would become more ambiguous. Okay, and another topic, which is about how to produce numerous outputs. So if you want to, so we have seen simple classification into just small number of classes, like rock, paper, scissors, vertical, horizontal. But if you want to classify into, if you want to decode brain image into visual image, okay, if you want to get output of image, visual image, using the conventional method, you have to present many images to obtain training data. So even if you assume that image is just 10 by 10 binary images, there are 2 to the power of 100 possible images. So you cannot show all these images in a scanner. Okay. So, how we can get the numerous outputs? Okay. So, and we came up with modular decoding approach. And here, no matter how our mental state is complicated, maybe we can think of that as a combination of some elemental features. Okay. So for instance, a color in this region. So, and by combining them, we can make a complex mental state. And since this elemental feature is assumed to be simple, we can train the decoder with small amount of data. But by combining the outputs, we can get huge number of possible outputs. Okay, that's the idea. And this was applied to the problem of visual image reconstruction. And the presented image was 10 by 10 binary image. And so here we assumed that the single image consists of image bases, multi-scale image bases. And we trained many local image decoders which predicted the mean contrast of within the local image basis region. And then that's combined to create a single image. Okay, and how we train the decoder. So we just, for the training, we just presented random images, and we present 400 random images in 1 hour experiment. So it's really boring task just watching random images, and so it's a lot of images for the subject. But compared to the whole, images, 2 to the power of 100 images, this is really tiny fraction of images. So the question is whether this, decoder trained with very small fraction of images can generalize to any arbitrary images. And to test this, we showed these images and the independent random images. And we present and we just gave the decoder the whole visual cortex box cells and let the computer select appropriate box cells and determine weights. And because you can use the retinotopy kind of information, but we didn't use that, and it turned out that one-to-one mapping from retinotopy is not so useful to make this our level of reconstruction. So we really needed to have machine learning derived very subtle, complicated weighted patterns. And these are the results. And the top row, these are presented images, and the second row shows the reconstructed images. And we presented each image for 12 seconds, and the TR was 2 seconds. And the reconstructed images from brain activity averaged across 12 seconds. And here, this movie shows, this is presented image, and this is reconstructed image. So this is from a single volume data acquired every 2 seconds. So the quality is worse, but still I think you can recognize the basic shape. Okay. And to make numerous output, you can also use other methods like encoding model, which I think Jack Gallant will talk about later. So instead of decoding model, and you can make a computational encoding model, which has visual image as input, and the output is brain activity in voxel intensities. Okay, and once this is trained computationally, so this, the computational model can make prediction for numerous images, and you can make a big database, and using that, you can do predictions about many images. Okay, and in contrast, our model is just trained for decoding. In terms of decoding, it's a simple model. And just for reference, we have recently developed a more general framework which automatically estimated modules using Bayesian canonical correlation analysis, and from which we can naturally derive both encoding and decoding models. But I don't have time to discuss this in this talk. Okay. And finally, okay. So this final topic. So this is about how to deal with spontaneous unstructured data. So, and I'm not going to give a very general method, but I just show one example from our study. So the specific question here was whether we can decode visual dream contents, okay, from brain activity. Okay, so first I'd like to show what kind of experiment we did. Okay. Okay, so actually this is the subject wearing EEG cap. So we do simultaneous EEG fMRI measurement, and from EEG we monitor sleep stage. Okay, and this woman, Dr. Tamaki, she's a trained sleep researcher and the EEG reader. She's now monitoring the EEG and determining when to awaken the subject. So there's no sound, but please look at this caption below. She's asking, what did you see just before awakening? Now awakening. This is subject's answer. So we just repeated this many times, and until we obtained 200 visual dream reports in each subject, we repeated this over several days experiments. Okay, so we have this study is based on sleep onset dreams. Okay, so it takes time to go into the first REM period. So we are collecting that, but for this study, we looked at the sleep onset imagery. Okay, and by looking at the EEG wave, we can tell whether the subject is dreaming or not to some extent. But the EEG doesn't tell the contents, so we have to look at the fMRI activity patterns, which is simultaneously measured. Okay, the first thing we tried was visual image reconstruction. In a separate experiment, we presented many random images and built image reconstruction model. And this was applied to some dream sample. And So we used the brain activity pattern just before awakening. Okay? And for this particular example, upon awakening, the subject reported that I saw Taylor was talking to me. And the subject was one of my students, and Taylor was an intern student, American intern student at that time. And so this is the reconstruction from the sleeping brain just before awakening. So can you see Taylor here? So when I keep watching this, I feel like, here is Taylor, but so far this was not successful. So we're pursuing other methods for reconstruction, but it turned out very difficult. There can be many reasons. So we switched our focus of study, and we tried to decode semantic aspect of the dreaming. So, and we have dream report data. This is totally free format, just to let the subject to describe the visual contents. So it's very unstructured data. So to make a more structured label, we did some simple natural language processing. So we first extracted nouns representing visual objects, and the objects' names are mapped to a lexical database called WordNet, developed by Princeton psychologists. It has a hierarchical structure like this. So we can use this to find some major categories. For instance, if the occurrence is particular word is very few, you can merge them into more general terms. And based on this kind of method, we extracted about 20 major object categories, which we call base synsets. And using that, we relabeled the dream contents like this. Okay. And so we have basic object categories like book, building, car, character, and we have 200 dreams. Okay. And using these object categories, we collected natural images depicting each category. We used ImageNet, which is tightly linked to WordNet. And ImageNet is now very heavily used by computer vision scientists. Okay. And using these natural images, we trained the decoder. We did another experiment, and using that data, we trained the decoder. Okay. And again, we trained decoder, and this decoder gives output having continuous values for each of 20 object categories, indicating the presence of each object. And this model was used to analyze brain activity just before awakening. Okay. And since we have a continuous score, by shifting the threshold, we can do ROC analysis. And each line corresponds to each of categories. Okay. And as you can see, not all categories are reliably detected, but about 1/3 of object categories we can reliably detect the presence with statistically significant level. Okay. And we can also look at the time course of the score, and we have the scores for 20 categories. And this is the time when the subject was awakened. The previous slide was from this time window. And we can shift this. Okay? And for this particular example, the subject reported a dream about the character. And consistent with this, the score for the character became high towards the time of awakening. And you can visualize this result as the size of dark cloud the size corresponds to the score. And here I'm showing the stimulus images weighted according to the score. So this is not a reconstruction of shape or color. This just indicates what kind of stimulus give rise to similar brain activity pattern to the one measured during sleep. Okay, and this is pooled time course, and so the reported, for reported object category, the score goes high towards the time of awakening, and even after that it's still high, but this can be explained by hemodynamic delay, I think. And also we can find high scores for unreported object categories if it is related to the reported category. So for instance, in this example, book was not reported explicitly, but it's related to character, right? And it tends to have high score. So this may mean that by brain decoding, we are able to decode which is not explicitly reported by the subject. Okay? And long time before awakening, there's no difference between conditions, but this does not necessarily mean that subject is not dreaming. Maybe, for instance, subject may be dreaming, and for instance, here we have high scores here, but this is not reflected in the report. But this might be actual dream, which subject doesn't remember. So in other words, using this method and by refining this method to achieve much higher accuracy, we may eventually be able to extract dream contents, even including those which the subject cannot be aware. Okay. Okay, so I'm running out of time. So this is just summary, and finally I just introduce this our code and data sharing site. This is the portal from our sites, and here we have many projects, codes, and raw data. And we are also developing a platform for data sharing of time-aligned behavior brain data. So for decoding, it's important to have data in a format in which data, behavior and brain data are aligned. So we are developing a web platform for that using data from my lab and my collaborators. And we are going to have a major update in a couple of weeks. And please visit this site, and you can contribute your data to this website. But data conversion is really bit complicated, so please contact us if you are interested. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.